So, we tend to think of things like virtue signaling and, fake networking as these totally modern internet age problems. Like,
Yeah.
we act as if this obsession with curating a perfect public image is something that only started when we all got smartphones.
Right, like it's a completely new phenomenon.
Exactly. But what if I told you that 400 years ago, a group of French aristocrats turned the dissection of this exact kind of human phoniness into an absolute art form?
I mean, it completely reframes how we look at our own modern behavior. We are basically looking at human software that has been running just uninterrupted for centuries.
Yeah, and that is exactly what we are decoding today. So welcome back to another deep dive. As always, we are thrilled to have you with us.
We really are.
We've got a super fascinating stack of sources for you today. We're pulling from historical texts, biographies, philosophical treatises, and some incredibly sharp translated maxims straight out of 17th century France.
It's a great collection of material.
It totally is. And our mission today is to transport you back to a world of aristocratic intrigue, really the literal birthplace of cynical moral psychology. But we're also going to uncover an erased female genius who proved that even in a society completely overflowing with fakes, true friendship is actually still possible.
To really understand that philosophy, though, we can't just look at the ideas in a vacuum. We have to, look at the unique laboratory where they were forged.
Right, because this wasn't happening in some dusty university lecture hall. We're going back to the early 1600s, to the birth of the French salon.
Yes.
And the catalyst for all of this is this woman named Catherine de Beauvoir, the Marquise de Rambouillet. She's born in 1588, and she's married off to a French marquis by the time she's like 12.
Which is just wild to think about.
Totally. But when she arrives in France, she takes one look at the royal court and absolutely despises it.
And you can completely understand why. I mean, the French royal court at this time was incredibly coarse. It was this highly militaristic culture dominated by rough, violent men.
Lots of swords.
Tons of swords. Endless political backstabbing and just constant public posturing. It was loud, it was dangerous, and there was zero room for genuine intellectual connections.
So instead of just dealing with it, she essentially creates her own alternative universe. Starting around 1620, she begins gathering people at her Parisian residence, which is the Hôtel de Rambouillet.
Right.
And she doesn't just invite people over. She physically redesigns the architecture of her home to force people to interact differently.
This is such a crucial architectural shift. At the time, aristocratic homes were built around these huge, cavernous reception halls. They were explicitly designed for grand, loud, public displays of wealth and status.
Just flexing on everyone.
Exactly. But the Marquise tore that whole concept up. She devised suites of small, intimate rooms, so guests could, move from room to room, actually finding privacy for quiet conversation.
It's honestly like someone today looking at a massive, toxic social media platform, like let's say Twitter, where everyone's just screaming at each other in public for clout.
Oh, that's...
And deciding to just abandon it entirely. Instead, they go build a highly curated, invite-only Discord server just for intellectuals.
a place where you can actually hear yourself think.
Exactly. Without performing for an audience of millions.
That captures the dynamic perfectly, honestly. The most famous of these spaces she built was her chambre bleue, a room painted entirely in blue with these heavy blue brocade wall hangings.
Sounds gorgeous.
It was. And inside that room, her troll superpower was her lack of prejudice. She entertained princes of royal blood right alongside writers and poets, and she treated them with the exact same grace.
Which was a big deal back
A
then.
huge deal. In a rigidly hierarchical society, she elevated the man of letters to the same level as a duke. Her circle even gave her this anagram name, incomparable Arthenis, to signify this almost like mythical status she held among them.
Okay, I see the appeal of that, I really do. But reading through the sources, there's a part of this that feels, I don't know, incredibly pretentious.
Oh, for sure.
Like, they developed this culture of the précieuse or preciosity. It was this highly elaborate, super refined style of talking.
Right.
They spent their time playing these literary games, like having a literal factional war over two different sonnets, the Eurynistes versus the Jobelints.
Yes, the famous sonnet quarrel.
Or they spent months writing the Guirlande de Julie, which was 41 separate madrigals just about flowers for her daughter. I mean, it sounds like a bunch of bored, rich people playing vocabulary games. How did this actually matter?
It totally looks like elite navel-gazing on the surface.
Yeah.
And decades later, the playwright Molière actually ruthlessly mocked them for it.
Right.
But look at the mechanism of what they were actually doing. By obsessing over the nuances of language, they were actively domesticating the French nobility. They were replacing the culture of the sword with the culture of the word.
Okay, so by forcing these rough, militaristic guys to care about poetry and, like, precise adjectives, they were essentially civilizing them.
Precisely. They demanded clarity, psychological depth, and adequate expression. And by doing so, they forged the tools of communication that literally laid the groundwork for French classical literature.
Wow.
Elevating conversation into a fine art was a radical political act at the time. Brilliant women, like Madame de Sévigné, wore the label of précieuse as a badge of absolute pride because it meant they were shaping the culture's intellect.
That makes a lot of sense. But creating an intellectual safe space only works when the outside world is stable.
Right.
And the sources show that by the 1640s, that stability just completely shatters. The salon at Rambouillet declines as key figures pass away, but more importantly, France is plunged into a massive, bloody civil war.
The Fronde.
Fronde.
And the Fronde completely changed the psychology of the next generation of thinkers. I mean, it was this chaotic period of aristocratic rebellion against royal absolutism. Friends betrayed friends, alliances shifted overnight, and the sheer brutality of human ambition was on full display.
So the people who survived this didn't really have the luxury of believing in innocent literary games anymore.
No, not at all. Which brings us to the Duke of La Rochefoucauld.
This guy's biography reads like a chaotic action movie. He wasn't just a writer sitting in a quiet room, right? He was a frondeur, a literal aristocratic rebel.
He was right in the thick of it.
He conspired with the queen, he got locked up in the Bastille, he was exiled, and then in 1652, during the Battle of the Faubourg Saint-Antoine, he was shot straight through the face.
Right through the head.
He survived, but he almost lost his sight.
Yeah, and you just don't live through that level of trauma and betrayal without it leaving a profound mark on how you view human nature.
Oh, absolutely.
You can really see that introspection in his literary debut, which is actually a written self-portrait. He was brutally candid. He wrote about his dark complexion, his black eyes.
He even complained about his nose, right?
He did. He admitted he was deeply embarrassed by his nose, noting it was neither flat nor aquiline nor large, but comes down just a trifle too low.
The fact that he zeroed in on his own physical insecurities is so telling. So, after all this warfare, he retires to the country to recover.
Right.
Eventually, he comes back to Paris, joins a new salon, and in 1665, he publishes his masterpiece, The Maxims.
Yes.
It's a collection of 504 short, incredibly biting observations on human nature.
And those maxims are built on a very dark, very specific psychological foundation. The crucible of the Civil War essentially convinced La Rochefoucauld that human beings are fundamentally, inescapably self-regarding.
So everyone is just out for themselves.
Exactly. He popularized the concept of amour propre, or self-love. He argued that it is the master passion of humanity. In his view, psychological egoism rules us completely.
Okay, so if everything is driven by ego, how does he explain something that is universally considered good? Like, say, a soldier showing incredible courage on a battlefield.
Right.
He was a soldier himself. Surely he believed in bravery.
Actually, no, he didn't.
Hey, really?
Yeah. He would argue that what we call courage on the battlefield is rarely pure bravery. It's usually vanity, or a desperate fear of shame, or simply just a biological temperament.
Wow. So nothing is pure.
Nothing. Even humility is suspect to him. He viewed humility as just a highly refined form of pride. It's a trick where the ego elevates itself by pretending to be low, just so others will praise it for being so modest.
So it's basically the 17th century equivalent of the humble brag.
Exactly. He believed that what we call virtues are usually just vices disguised.
One of his quotes from the text perfectly captures this. He says, "Interest is the universal solvent. All the virtues are lost in interest, as rivers are lost in the sea."
It's incredibly bleak.
It is. He's saying altruism is just a complete myth.
He views all of social life as this theater of calculated performances. We deceive others, sure, but the real tragedy, in his eyes, is that we deceive ourselves.
We think we're the good guys.
Right. We actually convince ourselves that our motives are pure, when they are entirely self-serving.
Which makes his introduction to the Maxims so funny to me. He writes this preface basically telling his readers, hey, put it in your mind that none of these maxims apply to you personally. You are the sole exception.
It is brilliant.
It is the ultimate, no offense, but right before saying something deeply offensive about the reader's character.
It's a genius rhetorical trap. He deliberately flatters the reader's self-love, in order to get them to lower their defenses, just so they'll read a book about how self-love corrupts absolutely everything.
But here's where the story gets really fascinating and, frankly, a bit infuriating.
Oh, definitely.
Because La Rochefoucauld is world famous. If you take a philosophy or literature class today, you read his maxims.
You do.
But he didn't actually invent the format. He perfected it in a salon hosted by a woman who was writing her own maxims first, a woman who has been largely erased from the popular narrative.
Yes, we really have to talk about Madeleine de Souvray, the Marquise de Sablé.
She is fascinating.
She had a serious aristocratic pedigree. Her father was a Marshal of France and the tutor to King Louis XIII. She was widowed in 1640 and eventually set up her own literary salon, which she later moved to the grounds of Port Royal.
Let's clarify Port Royal for a second, because the sources point out this wasn't just a standard convent.
Right.
It was the epicenter of a very specific religious movement.
Right. Port Royal was the heart of Jansenism. And to put it simply, Jansenism was a very strict, rigorous movement within Catholicism. They believed that human beings are fundamentally broken, our reason is corrupt, and we are completely reliant on divine grace.
So Madame de Sablé is hosting these brilliant minds, including La Rochefoucauld and the famous philosopher Blaise Pascal, in an environment that is already hyper-focused on dissecting human moral failure.
Exactly. And the tragedy here is that Sablé was the actual pioneer of this maxim genre. She was writing these brilliant, concise epigrams about human psychology.
But they weren't published until 1678, right? Like right after she died.
Yes. And look at the mechanism of how she was erased. In the 17th century, it was considered highly improper for an aristocratic woman to seek public fame through the printing press. So she just circulated her maxims privately as a social exercise in her salon.
And because she didn't aggressively publish them under her own name while she was alive, history just scrubbed her out.
Pretty much. When her maxims were finally gathered and printed, male publishers and later historians simply assumed that the heavy philosophical lifting must have belonged to her famous male friends.
Unbelievable.
Her works were published anonymously, misattributed to La Rochefoucauld, or even credited to Pascal.
Wait, the sources say Pascal literally copied her critiques? So we have a classic case of a woman doing the foundational work and the guys in the room getting centuries of historical credit.
It is a stark reminder of how easily the intellectual contributions of women in the early modern period were absorbed by the men around them.
It really is.
But when you actually read her maxims side by side with La Rochefoucauld's, you realize she wasn't just echoing him, she was developing her own highly original critique of society.
So if they are sitting in the same room looking at the exact same fake courtiers, did she agree with his ultra-depressing view of humanity?
She agreed with his diagnosis of polite society, sure, but she approached it quite differently. She was heavily influenced by the skepticism of Montaigne and her Jansenist faith.
Right.
Her very first maxim argues that human judgment is so weak and flawed that we have to rely on divine revelation. But when she turns her eye to the social sphere, she is ruthless in exposing how power and status actively warp the truth.
I was reading through her maxims, and some of them hit so hard today. Like in Maxim 48, she says that poor manners spoil even good reason. She argues that the how is the most important thing, and that the appearance we give, gilds, trims, and sweetens even the most troubling things.
Think about the mechanics of what she's saying there. She's pointing out that human beings are so weak that we just let flashy rhetoric completely disguise the truth.
We don't evaluate arguments based on logic. We evaluate them based on presentation.
If someone sounds confident and polished, we just believe them, even if they are entirely wrong.
Exactly. Knowledge isn't some pure, objective search for truth. It's completely embedded in the theater of power.
She also had a really sharp eye for our darker impulses. Look at Maxim 18. She writes about how people take a secret pleasure in the sight of tragic and terrible events because of their novelty and the natural malignity that is in us.
It's so true.
400 years ago, she diagnosed the exact psychological impulse behind doom scrolling, or like why traffic backs up when everyone rubbernecks at a car crash.
She understood that beneath our polite exteriors, there is a very real, very ugly appetite for disaster, as long as it's happening to someone else.
And she didn't spare the art of conversation either. In Maxim 31, she notes that one of the reasons it is so rare to find agreeable conversation is that almost no one is actually listening.
Oh, this one is brutal. Right. She says people just put on a compliant, attentive face Well, you can literally see in their eyes that their mind is frantically preparing what they want to say next.
Which is entirely accurate.
She argued that listening well and responding justly is a far greater perfection than speaking a lot. Think about the last networking event you went to, or even just a casual cocktail party.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean.
How many people were actually absorbing what you were saying, and how many were just standing in a circle, holding their breath, waiting for their turn to pitch their startup or tell their story?
Sablé is writing this in the 1600s, proving that human vanity hasn't evolved a single inch.
Not an inch. And she ties that vanity directly to social climbing. In Maxim 32, she observes how good fortune and promotions change a person's behavior.
She points out the hypocrisy perfectly.
Yeah.
If we truly valued inner virtue, a promotion or a windfall of money wouldn't change our face or our heart.
But of course it does.
We are obsessed with status, and we change our personalities to match our new titles.
So up to this point, she sounds just as cynical as La Rochefoucauld. Everyone is self-interested, we don't listen to each other, we're obsessed with status, and we let presentation trump truth.
Right.
But earlier, the sources highlighted that she fundamentally disagreed with him on one major point: the existence of true virtue.
Yes, and this is the crucial split between them. La Rochefoucauld believed that everything was corrupted by self-love. He didn't even believe in friendship.
Wow.
Yeah, in his Maxim 83, he explicitly states that what humanity calls friendship is just a business. It's an exchange of services, a reciprocal arrangement where self-love is always trying to extract some kind of profit.
So to him, friendship is literally just networking.
Exactly. Every relationship is transactional.
Yeah.
But Sablé pushed back against this entirely. She wrote her own treatise titled On Friendship, where she argued that while the public world is absolutely a theater of fakes, authentic virtue does exist in the intimate, egalitarian space of mutual friendship.
Which is refreshing.
In her Maxims 79 and 80, she writes that true love has a character so particular, it simply cannot be faked or hidden.
It's a surprisingly hopeful take. She's saying the world at large is a complete mess of performative egos, but if you find your people, you can build a small, resilient pocket of truth where self-sacrifice is real.
She held the reality of true friendship in such high regard that it actually led her to a very surprising conclusion. She absolutely despised the theater.
Let's dig into this, because this critique of the theater was misattributed to Pascal for centuries.
Yeah, it was.
And when I first read she hated plays, I just assumed it was the standard religious objection. You know, theaters in the 17th century were viewed as dens of sin, there were prostitutes in the audience, the jokes were dirty.
Right, but her objection had nothing to do with purity.
Which is so interesting.
No, her objection was purely psychological. In Maxim 81, she argues that the theater is dangerous specifically because it presents a delicate, innocent, and completely fake version of love.
She called it a natural and delicate representation of the passions.
Yes.
Wait, so she wasn't mad that plays were dirty? She was mad that they were too romantically perfect.
Yes. She recognized what we now call a mimetic effect. She worried that decent, innocent plays seduce people into desiring romantic, sentimental fantasies.
Ah, I see.
You watch these perfectly scripted, beautifully lit, dramatic expressions of love on stage, and you start to crave that artificial emotional high in your own life. And the danger is that this fantasy distracts you from doing the hard, sober, unglamorous work of actual friendship.
It's almost tragic, really. She's saying that by obsessing over the perfect cinematic version of love, we are actively blinding ourselves to the real messy people right in front of us.
Exactly.
If we bring that into our world, she's essentially diagnosing the danger of the modern rom-com or like heavily curated Instagram couples.
Oh, totally.
We look at these flawless, scripted relationships online and we fall in love with the fantasy. It ruins our expectations for our actual partners who forget to take out the trash or who get grumpy when they're tired because we're comparing them to a digital phantom.
She saw that the illusion of perfect love is the greatest threat to real love. Real friendship requires patience, forgiveness, and bearing with someone's flaws.
Yeah.
The theater gives you all the emotional payoff with none of the sacrifice. It's a simulation that threatens to replace authentic human connection.
So let's trace the journey we've just taken. We started in the intimate, plush blue rooms of the Hotel de Rambouillet, where conversation was weaponized to civilize a toxic, militaristic world.
Right.
We moved through the bloody civil wars of the Fronde, which shattered that safety and turned an action hero like La Rochefoucauld into a brilliant cynic who saw self-interest hiding behind every single human action.
And finally, we uncover the erased mind of Madame de Sablé, A woman who diagnosed the social fakeness of her era with razor-sharp precision, but who fiercely defended the hope that genuine self-sacrificing friendship is real.
It really highlights that being well-informed isn't just about reading the latest news
No,
cycle.
not at all.
It's about recognizing that the underlying architecture of human behavior, our ego, our desperate need for status, our vulnerability to self-deception, hasn't changed in centuries.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to take away today. Madame de Sablé was deeply worried that 17th century stage plays were acting as a dangerous simulation. A fake love that prevented people from forming real connections in the real world.
Think about your own life for a second. What would she say about our modern parasocial relationships?
Oh, that's a great question.
Think about the intense, one-sided friendships we form with podcasters, YouTubers, and social media influencers. Are we fulfilling our deep human need for connection with digital phantoms, just exactly as she warned?
It is a profound challenge to how we allocate our emotional resources in a hyper-connected world. Are we pouring our emotional energy into screens, feeling like we belong to a community, while completely neglecting the difficult, beautiful reality of a true friend sitting right next to us?
It really is. So the next time someone does you a favor or praises you and you find yourself wondering if they just want something in return, remember that the motives behind human behavior have always been murky.
Always.
But if you're lucky enough to find a true friend amidst all the noise, hold on to them. Because in a world of fakes, that small pocket of truth is everything. Keep learning, keep questioning, and we will see you on the next deep dive.